This week on the show, the Emerald Head of Ekron appears.
They were the heroes from the future, teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse.
Oh, we are going to finally find out what the Emerald Empress's dealio is.
I'd also like to point out that despite our announcement, the Emerald Head of Ekron does not appear. And will not.
It is on the cover. The cover of this issue has the Emerald Head of Ekron.
That is Saria, the Emerald Empress. Her skull with the eye burning through.
No, that eye is too big to fit into her skull. Meanwhile, I want you to gurgle for your teammates.
That's just gross.
I mean, it's how you make the sound irk, apparently.
Irk, by the way, is the name of one of the students in the Legion Academy. The little gray guy with 3 fingers on one hand. His name is Irk. So I'm going to call it a shout out.
I suppose that is what you could call it if you want. I also like that the Emerald Empress is just evil enough that she's going to make a deal and then go back on her deal. Release me and I will save your planet. Okay, we'll release you. I'm going to destroy your planet anyway.
But not if Colossal Boy, wearing the single worst costume in his history.
Yeah, that one
of
looks really
horrific
dumb.
Costumes.
That one looks really dumb,
terrible.
especially because everybody's so thick.
Everybody is... Everybody is very blocky, and I actually attribute part of that to Al Gordon, who joins the inking team this particular issue. But yeah, we're talking about a man who literally once wore two-tone brown and blue with bare legs and like a chain thing across his chest that I'm pretty sure in many clubs in New York City indicate that he's, I don't know. Insert BDSM joke here, but this is just not a good suit. And I've said it before. I don't necessarily like the idea of uniforms, and the more we see them here, the less I like the idea of uniforms. Because if Colossal Boy wears an ugly green and yellow cowboy costume, but nobody else does, you can just go, oh, Colossal Boy's wearing an ugly green and yellow cowboy costume. But everybody's wearing the same butt ugly costume, just with different colors. And
Yeah, on the plus side, we've only got a few more issues to go, and then we can reboot all this stuff and look at even worse costumes.
And these suits do never, ever reappear after the end of Volume 3.
Yeah, it is interesting that Colossal Boy does show up because, he's been on the injured reserve list. And then finally, when he gets home, something's going on with Yura, which I don't understand. Because she's got tentacles coming out and entering her body in a lot of weird places. And she's pretty angry because, hey, you didn't check in with me first. And he's like, why should I do that? I'm the man of the house.
I can't always stop for niceties. And she then transforms into something that I can only describe as Stanley Tucci wearing alien makeup. And then her face turns into one giant screaming mouth. And then her face disappears. I mean, on the one hand, I do like the idea that if you're a Durlan, your anger can come out in your physical form.
Yeah, you can actually make your face an emoji.
Right. But I also think that this is incredibly disturbing and more than a little bit gross. It's an interesting decision. It's an artistic decision, much like dressing Dawnstar in whatever they've dressed Dawnstar in.
Oh, she's not dressed. That's the thing. She and Wildfire have been making out, and she's got burn marks all over her body where he's been touching her or touching each other because of he's a man made out of intense heat and energy, and he's like, oh man, I'm really sorry that I burned you up. I don't think that our relationship is going to work out. And she's like, yeah, I agree. What was I thinking? I've been so undecided about what I want in life that I finally decided now I don't know anymore. So I'm out of here.
She says, I love you. And she says, my burns will heal. And the ongoing bipolar disorder, you can't really call it a chemical imbalance because there's no chemicals left in Drake. He's just like a disembodied brain. But Wildfire needs something, counseling. I don't know. Somebody needs to balance his chakras.
I've said this for years now that we've been doing the show. All of these kids have been forced into servitude by the United Planets, and not once have they been given any kind of therapy or suggested that they go to therapy, because it's just assumed, the Saturnian, she will take care of all of the mental wellness because she's got mental powers. So therefore, everyone, I've been saying for years, all of these people need therapy. No one listens. That's the problem. No one listens when I say, you need therapy. They're just like, nope, I'm going to continue to do the exact same thing that I've been doing, while everyone shakes their head in shame.
How do you think they manage to like, how do you measure serotonin in a sentient bag of flames? And also, if you're listening and you don't know what serotonin is, congratulations, you have enough.
Therapy doesn't necessarily have to come from an imbalance in serotonin. It could simply be, hey, man or woman, I noticed that you're going through some things. How about we sit down and talk? Even if you think that you're feeling well enough, let's talk about some of the verbiage that you're using. Hey, let's talk about some of the ways that you're acting that may be inappropriate. Those are things that you can sit down and do therapy, or you just make it a mandatory thing that everybody has to go to a weekly therapy session when they're on planet Earth, and they get to sit down and they get to talk about, hey, here's what's going on. How does that make you feel? What do you think about this? Would you have done anything different? So therapy doesn't have to be because you have a chemical imbalance. It can literally just be, hey, here are thoughts that I am processing. Help me understand them.
I agree. It is also very clear that Drake has some sort of imbalance. This man, he is up and down the emotional.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, of course, he has gone through a trauma. Someone has shoved him into a giant microwave oven. They've burned him to a crisp. He has no body. He has no ability to have any kind of a physical connection with anyone, and he may not be mature enough to have a emotional and mental relationship with other people. And so he's frustrated and he's angry, and he does need to talk to somebody about, listen, I really think I like this girl, but I'm bringing her incredible physical pain, but I still want to do these things with her. I don't know what to do. I don't think it's right for me to be in here. Okay, well, let's sit down and let's talk about this and let's think things through rationally. Maybe we can have some couples counseling, and you can both come in together where you can share your issues together in a space where we're not going to judge. But first of all, in the United States of America, not other countries, because we know other countries are much better with how they treat the brain. And I'm not going to say mental illness, because just because you go to a therapist doesn't mean you're mentally ill. But how we treat people mentally and their mental wellness in other countries is not the same as it is in America, where mental therapy or mental wellness has a stigma attached to it that you must be crazy or insane or unfit, or you have a chemical imbalance, and therefore you are a wrong part of society. This is even more so in the 1980s. This were the end of 1989 is where we're at right now. The problem is, in the 1980s, here's where everyone can go, here comes Stephen going on a Ronald Reagan rant. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan decided, among many things, that too many people were getting freeloader activities. And because of a book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the play and the movie that followed, a lot of people were revealed that the mental wellness or the mental institutions in the United States were not treating their patients with the proper care and respect. At the same time, Ronald Reagan, who's tired of all these GD freeloaders, which is why he got rid of state funding or state dollars going to universities. He did this while he was a governor in California. He started to do the same thing nationwide to mental institutions, where it's like, hey, listen, if people need mental care, then they don't need government money for it. The communities can take care of all of that. And essentially, because all the funding dried up and local communities didn't have the necessary funds to support all of the just we'll call them insane asylums, they didn't have the money to keep them open. All of these patients who couldn't pay, families couldn't pay, insurance wouldn't pay, health insurance wouldn't pay, etc. They were just booted out onto the streets. So when we talk about how every member of the Legion of Superheroes probably needs to have a therapy session, Dr. Jim is great with the physical, but he's probably not with the mental. These are things that if you would have said something like that in a comic back then about Wildfire actually sitting down and expressing feelings and working through these issues, which probably could have been a very good thing to do in a comic book that is supposed to be progressive, people would have laughed. They would have said, what is this nonsense? And thrown these issues in a paper. So anytime the topic of mental wellness comes up, I always get a little weirded out because of how people still treat mental illness as a stigma. Something's wrong with you. It's a joke. And it's just, it's like, well, maybe we should take it a little bit more seriously. End wokeness. There you go. People who are anti-woke.
Yeah, whatever that means.
Yeah, they know what it means.
Yeah, they know what it means. It means black. But more importantly, you are absolutely correct, because everybody in this issue is, including the main villain, is having problems, because we find out the reason why Saria is looking for the secret of immortality. And it's not so she can live forever. It's so that she can finally die and get out from under the influence of the Emerald Eye. And we won't mention the name of
Ekron
person. Yeah. But, Ekron, the company that spilled all that oil in the Gulf. But not she makes one really, really bad decision. And honestly, I cannot figure out why she would do this, because I feel like even the Emerald Empress underestimates the fact that John Era is a pacifist. But when she attacks Trom, an Element Lad comes out of the skies and he's like, my people never use their powers in anger, but I will. And I'm just like, holy moly. Element Lad is going to turn this woman into cheese. And thankfully he doesn't. But it's really one of those moments where I'm just like, oh my, that is an enraged Element Lad. Very, very well drawn enraged Element Lad too. People have come to mess with his planet.
We do see a pretty intense fight between it. At one point, it's implied that the Emerald Empress loses an eye in this. We get to see Quizlet lose his spaceship, so he has to go back to his planet, and he died on the way back. And, everybody is taking their shot at the Emerald Empress, and she tries to make an escape. It is basically, she has a confrontation with the Emerald Eye and basically says, I've had enough. You are killing me, but you won't let me die. And I need to die. I am tired of being your plaything, your puppet to do what you will in this world. And she finally confronts Princess Projectress, Censor Girl. And apparently Censor Girl can just make the Emerald Eye unaware that basically makes it blind. This seems more like a Night Girl trick than a Censor Girl trick, but essentially it makes the Emerald Eye of Ekron blind to the fact that the Empress, or that Emerald Empress is not there, and so the connection between the two is released, and because there's no more connection, the Emerald Empress can shrivel away like the third act in a mummy movie.
It's ugly. Now, I know that we've seen Projectra, Censor Girl, block other people's senses before. Because at one point, I want to say she shut off Ultra Boy's Penetravision, or maybe it was Monel's X-ray vision. But just the fact that the eye not being able to sense her girl, yeah, that's ugly. It is really, really shocking. And I love the fact that she looks remarkably like one of the monsters from Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which would have been in theaters at approximately this time. So that's kind of cool.
I'm more concerned that she blows away in space. I mean, there's cosmic winds, but it's almost like this should have been on Earth and the winds blew her away. But is she gone? I doubt it. It's a pretty good conclusion to the Emerald Empress's story arc from the first time that we saw her to now. I feel fairly satisfied with her arc. I would have liked a little bit more hints, and I certainly in this most recent arc with her, they've been dropping the hints of who controls who, but a little bit of stop talking to me, or something along those lines where it's clear that the eye, it's more than just a magical bauble. Yeah. That it's actually something that has sentience, that is doing something to her, and build that up over the years. But again, that requires a lot of forethought, and comics just don't have that in the 50s through the 80s.
And to be fair, at the point when Shooter created Emerald Empress and Projectra back in maybe 67, 68, none of this would have been a thing. But the fact that we built this up, and the fact that we do see Projectra, who was one of the first Legionnaires to confront the Emerald Empress when they assembled the Fatal Five to fight the Sun Eater. You'll remember that happening. It's really kind of a nice bookend. It's an interesting moment, and it's the kind of moment that you don't necessarily always get in 80s comics. These days, it's much more common. But I feel like, my theory that the Legion kind of leads the way, this moment where the villain is literally begging for help, telling Projectra, I need your help, and I'm calling upon you with the power of our rank as nobles. And Projectra's just like, look, you were never noble, and I gave up my throne. Just leave all of that out of us. But it's a really, really nice moment. And then she blows away into the non-existent winds. My theory is, here's my no prize. They're standing on the hull of the Legion cruiser. The Legion cruiser is established to have shields, and they are talking. They don't have like a telepathic bubble. I feel like inside of the shields of the cruiser, there must be at least some oxygen, which would allow for some swirling air to blow away Saria's dusty corpse. That's my no prize attempt. 40 years too late and at the wrong company. But, man's got to do what he's got to do, right?
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/major spoilers.
Now that we have had a big event in our comic books, it's time for a palate cleanser, or as I call it, don't buy this issue. Legion of Superheroes 59, Ghost in the Clubhouse. We get a retro story of the first Invisible Kid and his adventures in trying to track down an invisible specter haunting the clubhouse. And I will say one thing that makes this nice is that Giffen and Mark Bright and Carlos Garzon and Al Gordon all come together and they say, hey, we're going to make this look like a retro comic book. And they do a really good job of making this feel like a 70s era comic book in the story that's being told. It's a little bit panels are a little bit overdone. This is something that I would expect at Marvel at the time, maybe not so much at DC in the late 60s, early 70s. But yeah, we get a story about Invisible Kid 2, watching the holotapes, a story about Invisible Kid 1, trying to track down intruders who are doing something nefarious.
And, Mark Bright at this point in time had just come off, or may still have been, on Iron Man.
Is that why we get Iron Man in this comic?
Yeah, you remember the Armor Wars that you guys crapped so hard on? The Armor Wars was drawn by Mark Bright. Oh, hush. Now, I think that there are two important things about the villain in this issue. A, he doesn't necessarily look so much like Iron Man.
He looks like Iron Man. You could show this to anybody and go, is this like the Mark 0.5 suit?
Anyway, he does have the coloring, and I agree that his faceplate does not look like the Iron Man of the era, but his faceplate in retrospect resembles modern Iron Man. The Iron Man of 1988-89 would not necessarily have looked like this, but I also feel like the red and yellow coloring was a mistake. Also, this guy gets no name. We never find out his name. As far as I can tell, in costume or out, he does not have a designation. Although when you take off his costume, he does look remarkably like a shaved baboon. So I don't know.
I think
he's Iron Man drill.
I think he's got hate tapes inside of him.
Hate tapes? You think he's
because when they pull off the mask, it's all like electronics and stuff on the inside. I don't know. I drifted off about the third page in because it's like the story has no bearing on anything. It is a side. It is literally a reprieve from the big event. Everybody take a breath. Here's a story that we think you might like, and it has no bearing on anything that's to come. Now, another thing that I will say is if you have your copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, if you do, you know that there is this panel in there where I believe it is Steve Rogers being shot by the Red Skull. It's a close-up of a hand with a pistol blowing somebody away. And if you look at when Iron Man is shooting Invisible Kid, that's like it's lifted from that one page in the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Now that I did not know. That's actually pretty cool. Interesting bit of nonsense at the end when the bad guy who is not Iron Man gets pulled out. He's like, "Hey, took you long enough, Quanto." Quanto is one of the members of the Taurus gang, who were founded by Zoltaurus, who was a corrupt science police chief, who basically assembled a bunch of supervillainy guys under Shooter's reign back in Adventure 374. So this is predating the first appearance of the Taurus gang, but if you actually place it in history, it ends up being kind of an early hint that the Taurus gang is on their way, which I think is kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, you can do sorts of cool things with retcons.
Right? It's great. But not everybody thinks of that kind of thing. And then when we get to the actual point of the issue, which is, was there a ghost?
Oh, I thought it was all about the election time again.
Oh no, that's the nonsense. Was it a ghost? Because the distraction that saves the lives of Invisible Kid and the once and future Chemical King is a loud whoomp, like a big hunk of iron falling, and they find that Pharaoh Lad, who is at the time the only dead Legionnaire, Pharaoh Lad's statue has fallen. Now, Pharaoh Lad's statue would not make a huge whump like iron because it's made of plastic. But I do like the fact that this story features two dead Legionnaires saved by someone who seems to be a third dead Legionnaire, kind of emphasizing the danger factor, the terrible, terrible darkness mentioned. This is a depressing run of Legion. This is a depressing run of Legion because at the beginning, we do see Jacques, the Invisible Kid, sitting among the statues of the dead Legionnaires, and there's like 14 of them now. But it ends with just that one. that one dead Legionnaire from way back in 1967, possibly saving the lives of his soon-to-be dead friends. And also, I don't know if you remember in the reboot, the sort of kind of plot point that they couldn't quite pull off, that Invisible Kid was dating Kondo Arlick, who in the previous continuity would have been Chemical King. That actually starts here. This is the first time we ever really see anything that would indicate that these two have a relationship. So when we start getting into the reboot Legion and we start seeing Invisible Kid's hints of having a boyfriend, it's Kondo Arlick who would have been the Chemical King. So you got that going for you, which is nice.
Yeah. And then apparently it's election time again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's election time again. And the winner of the election, Censor Girl. Yeah. Good for her.
And her deputy.
She just killed somebody and they elected her president.
That's okay. They made her vice president the dumbest person in the United Planets, Timberwolf. Can you imagine a world where Timberwolf takes control?
Are you asking me to imagine a world where we have a stupid vice president? Yes, I can think of many instances where the stupidest, least qualified person is the vice president. Yes, I can think of many instances. So if you're asking me, is it a surprise that Timberwolf was elected as deputy leader? No, it is not. But and that's where we're going to end it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for checking out another installment of the Legion Clubhouse. We are so glad that you came to hang out with us this week, and we want you to come again next time because, we are only going to review one issue next week. It is the Legion of Superheroes, Volume 3, Number 60, When Magic Returns, because, science and magic go so well together. We say goodbye to an old friend. That's next time on the Legion Clubhouse.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.